Good morning, and I appreciate everybody joining this morning. And I'm going to spend the next probably 20 minutes or so walking you through kind of a status update on where we sit as it relates to what was originally called the Soil Stewardship Program and now is called Farm Possible. So again, we view this as the next chapter in thrivability, and why this is important to us. Um, we all appreciate the pressure that's in the system right now in terms of commodity pricing, fertilizer pricing. All these things are coming together and make it very difficult. And what we're trying to navigate with our farmers is the opportunity of saying, guys, is there a way that we can successfully navigate a reduction in some upfront costs to take some of that pressure out of the upfront, drive the world's best crop that we can possibly produce, and then maximize that yield at the end of the season, and then incrementally to that add an additional revenue stream. So we launched Soil Stewardship a year ago with the vision of accessing the carbon markets and driving this additional revenue stream. What we've recognized over the last year since we first introduced this is there's volatility and the market itself is a little slow. Some of this I would give credit to our current administration. Um, as much as I believe that President Trump is a supporter of farmers in this particular segment, he's put a little bit of headwinds in front of us. And that, the other piece of this is, um, you know, people are looking for and what is the possibility of driving again an incremental ROI to their farm, and are there additional paths to do that? And we do believe that that's the case, and we've changed our narrative a little bit in terms of how we've introduced ourselves into that industry, and we really don't talk about carbon as much as we do call something we call thrive acres. So we're trying to move the conversation beyond the idea of carbon being the only commodity that can happen to be in your soil, and elevate that conversation to a different level so that we differentiate ourselves in the corporate America view of what we're up to. So as a farmer, obviously, as you know, we are, topsoil first. And that's the narrative we're trying to bring into that carbon buying community, that it's not just about carbon, it's actually about impacting topsoil, impacting the rural communities, and really elevating what's happening. So if you think about our starting point, we launched the program a year ago in August. We successfully enrolled 1 million acres. Over the winter months, we successfully went out and got 75,000 core samples across that 1 million acres, so roughly a 15-acre grid, and got all those results into the lab and got those back. So significant progress in terms of getting that baseline on that initial 1 million acres. That's given us a lot of credibility as we stepped into the carbon buying community and really started to talk about what we're up to. It's by far the largest program in the history of the sector from an agricultural perspective. Um, the other critical thing that we introduced, the idea that all of our farmers, in addition to applying our product and building their topsoil, are proactively moving to less tillage. They're proactively reducing their fertilizers, and all this is creating true change in the farming community and within our farmers. Um, so what we've learned about the carbon market specifically is the buyers themselves don't want to take farm level risk. When we originally envisioned this program, we wanted to promote the idea, and our vision was that we could take a given farm's performance. So if one farmer happened to be farming in a way that was a little bit more successful from a carbon perspective than his neighbor, that he could get rewarded for that. What we found in the community of corporate buyers, they don't want the risk. They want to buy an aggregated project. So for us, that would be 1 million acres from 2025. And they like to get a slice of that, so that statistically that takes out all the variability. So if one person performs high and one of them lower, you're not betting at a farm level on which farmer you want to support. You want to get your small percentage of all the farmers. So that's really what we've seen, is that they want these big bundled projects. They're not looking for farm level performance. That for us did a couple of things. One, it ensured that everybody that signs up and moves forward with us, and everybody that has already signed up, is going to benefit from this program. There's not going to be winners and losers. So you think about our data from 2024. We definitely had some farms that performed very well and some that actually lost carbon. And I personally wouldn't want to be sitting in a place where I'm having that play out financially for our farmers today. I want them to be able to count on what we're up to. Um, all that said, the political headwinds that we've received that I mentioned are real, right? So basically trying to push back in the marketplace broadly from a government perspective, the need for carbon reductions and some of these programs has certainly given some opportunity for companies to pause. I will say, by and large, we have big corporate buyers that are saying we have a 15-year plan. A White House is just a blip on that screen. It's for 4 years. We can't change our overall program, so we're thankful for that. But we've really had to position ourselves in front of those corporate buyers that we are the ones that can give them the scale that they're after and the simplicity. So if we look back at our 2024 progress, we did 65,000 acres across 7 states. Across the board, we had an amazing performance in terms of overall carbon performance. Again, put in context, the broader practice-based programs that are in the marketplace, they are still averaging for everything we're gaining somewhere between zero point 0.2 and zero point 0.5 tons of CO2 per acre. We got done with our 24 and we were at 5 tons per acre. So instead of less than half a ton, we were at 5 tons. So we're talking about 10 to 20 times better performance, which is awesome. That said, we absolutely had a percentage of our farmers, just under 20%, that actually showed negative net carbon tonnage in their farms. And then we had those that were above. But again, the overall average we're super excited about because that means that we were growing organic matter at that level, right? So for every 1% of organic matter, 58% of that's carbon. So you cannot build your soil and build organic matter without having carbon in the ground. And so we know we're accelerating that, which we're super excited about. So that is a huge impact and excitement that we have. That the commitment we have to soil health is absolutely showing up in the data across broad acres. One of the things is that majority of almost everybody in the program saw an improvement in their bulk density. And when you say bulk density improvement, you're talking about reducing compaction. Now, I'm excited about that because agronomically, that's what we want. It actually works against you when you calculate tons of carbon per volume, right? So if you can imagine an 18-inch depth in your soil across an acre, so that's a volume of soil. If it's heavily compacted, you actually have more tons of soil because of that compaction. As we start to open up the porosity and get the soil structure back into that soil, you actually volumetrically have less soil in that acre. So by improving on compaction, you actually reduce the total numbers total amount of soil you have. So if I took your carbon from 1% of that ground to 1.1% of that ground, it's a 10% improvement in carbon. That's awesome. But if you actually had bulk density reduction, its potential when you calculate the volume of that area against the percentage of carbon, it could have given you a net negative total amount of tons of carbon in that particular field. So again, some of this we know is about the early adopters, first and second year users are still opening up their soil structure. But the beauty of it is, even with those things happening, our aggregate was still extremely positive, and we're super excited about that outcome. So as we look forward, we're looking at how do we make this whole thing more predictable and measurable? Because again, if there's ever been a moment in time in farming where counting on cash flow, understanding what money you're spending and wanting it's coming back is critical, it's now. And as we go to the corporate buying community, which we're counting on for this cash flow, we want to make sure that we're putting all of our growers in the front of the line, that if they're going to spend $1, they're going to spend that first dollar with us. And so what that's enabled us to do is create this thing we call a Thrive Acre. And that has really gotten people's attention. So they've gotten excited about what we're up to. And through that confidence and that commitment to us to buy your acres, we're now in a place to actually offer guaranteed payments. So predictable annual payments. So for those that were in the 25 program, so if you currently have a crop in the ground that you signed up for last August, you're going to receive your first payment on January 15th. So it's for $40. If you happen to have applied for financing through Conduit, we're going to be paying that line down for you. So you're getting a monthly statement, shows the amount that you owe. That'll go to zero in January, and we're going to take care of that. So that's the first payment that you'll receive from the crop that you have in the ground for us from an environmental asset value perspective. And then you'll get your second check of $30 no later than August 15th. So this time next year in your mailbox, you'll receive an additional payment. So between those two, we're giving you $70 of value per acre of crop that you've got in the ground right now. So that predictability for me is a critical piece of this. Um, the other piece of this puzzle that we added on, because again, we're trying to differentiate our Thrive acre in the eyes of these corporate buyers from any other traditional carbon credit, is we layered on a community first approach. So that was about giving back to the community. So in addition to that payment going to you, we are committed across our growers that for every acre that joins into our program, that we're going to contribute back into local communities up to $10 per acre. And that local impact at a very significant level is very intriguing to our corporate buyers, because as they think about investing in thrivability, as we're calling it, and in supporting the local farmer, building topsoil, now they can also take credit for supporting local communities. It's a significant opportunity and differentiation as we engage them and trying to secure long-term commitment to their alignment with our farmers. So the first step in joining or moving forward with Farm Possible, if you're in the 25 program, you don't have to do anything. You will be getting an addendum to your agreement, just outlay your current acres. So if you've had any change in terms of reducing some acres, that'll be reflected in your field list. If you want to add incremental new farms, that will actually be a new 3-year commitment on those incremental acres, but you'll get those two pieces of paper. Obviously, it is a 3-year commitment to be part of Farm Possible. You do have to apply spring and fall. We obviously really, because we're improving your soil structure, we're asking you to reduce your tillage. And again, that should be a natural byproduct that you see in your soil. And now more than ever, we're trying to emphasize the importance of reducing NPK, because if you're pulling back on your fertilizer, you're going to create an environment where that plant is motivated, saying, I need help to make sure I have all my nutrients. And that's the very thing that sparks our performance. It's a motivated plant putting exudates into the soil that accelerate the growth of our biology and make this whole thing work. So we're symbiotic living in this relationship between our application of product, getting those base biology in the ground, and then with reduction of fertilizer, stimulating a motivated environment to really make this whole thing happen. So if you think about the gains that come from being part of Farm Possible, it's clearly at its core soil health. So you're going to see a structural improvement in your soil. The actual fungi that will build in your soil is going to start to build a soil structure that's again this web that's created to actually glue together the micro aggregates of your soil into macro aggregates. So it's like a bucket of golf balls. You can't compact it. You got natural channels for air and nutrients to move and water to move through that soil. We're building your organic matter. We're driving more rooting, because that motivated plant senses it's hungry, so it's going to drive rooting. That's ultimately going to give you a healthier plant. You get natural, you lessen your reliance on chemicals. You have less disease pressure. You're driving yield and ROI, right? So all these things are exciting, and you now are opening up this door that I've mentioned about access to a new revenue stream through your environmental assets. So Farm Possible, if you think about just like a year ago, it was called Soil Stewardship. This is the next evolution of that. And under Farm Possible, again, we're talking about transforming the life in your soil. We're talking about reductions in fertilizer. We're seeing our 3rd year guys as much as 40% reductions. We've got meaningful yield benefits in terms of a healthy plant in a motivated environment. It's going to drive record yields. We've got increased water holding capacity, because every time we can move that organic matter higher, 1 percentage point in improved organic matter, which again, a lot of people perceive could take a decade or more if you're doing everything right, we're seeing happen in 1, 2, or 3 growing seasons. But as I get, you go from 2.5% organic matter to 3.5%, you now all of a sudden have an extra 20 to 25,000 gallons of water holding capacity per acre, because that organic matter is the critical piece to that. And as we come after harvest this year and apply our product, our ability to clean up that residue, get it broke down, and move those nutrients back into the soil, it's like a fertilizer pass, right? You're going to get all that nutrients that's sitting above the ground, move them down into the soil, and that's going to save on your need, again, to be adding additional fertilizer at a time when we really can't afford it. The beauty of this beyond the crop itself is we're very excited about having introduced a product we call Horizons. It's internally being troubleshooted right now by our sales team. If they're on your farm, they can pull it up and show it to you. Before the end of the year, we will be rolling this out. It will be available at the App Store, where you can download the app. And what's going to be is the intelligence on your soil. So it'll be every time one of our soil specialists has been to your field and done a measurement, that data will be in there. If you opt to get into our environmental asset program through Thrive Acres, we will come out this winter and do 15-acre grid samples. If you're in the 25 program, we've already done that. And that 15-acre grid is obviously we took cores so we can measure the amount of carbon and bulk density, but we also stratified your soil with the Chrysler Labs probe. And we went at 6, 12, and 18 inches so we can see your nutrient levels at those different stratified levels. All that data will be inside of Horizons. And everybody's field that's in the program is getting flown with satellite imagery every 2 weeks. So the whole year's worth of satellite data, all the grid sampling, all the stratification, plus our local testing will all be aggregated. So you truly have a snapshot of the health of your soil. And then again, I already mentioned this ripple effect of being part of this is if you move forward on this Thrive Acre program, that will be pushing up to $10 an acre back into your local community. So again, just an exciting time. And then I'll bridge a little bit into the environmental assets parts with our organization. So Thrive Acres, again, it's this bundling of carbon, certainly, because that's a measurable component that people, from an audit perspective in the environmental space, that's a core measurement that they've all been tracking. But we're also talking about the co-benefits. And the co-benefits are the fact that because we're building carbon, that means we're building organic matter, which means we're doing better on holding water, which if you happen to be irrigated can reduce watering requirements. But in general, if you get a rain, let's hold on to all of it so we can raise the best possible crop. It's allowing our farmers with confidence to reduce fertilizer and give them the performance that is related to having that healthy, hungry plant driving this. And then that environmental impact, that rural community impact that we're having through donation and nonprofit. So you add all those things together, and we've truly shown up differently. And we're also showing up differently in that market because we've spun off a sister company. We call it HGX, and HGX's only job is to be out in the marketplace, contacting and directing demand for these Thrive Acres, right? So we are out in front of the key corporates, and I will tell you, you talk to a Unilever or Procter & Gamble or General Mills or Anheuser-Busch or a lot of these big organizations that have made 2030 and 2035 claims. They are on a journey and they are committed and they're pushing down through their supply chain the need to offset emissions. And those are the very companies that HGX is spending their time building that demand, building awareness of what we're up to over here, and the excitement we're hearing from them in terms of saying, I'm buying something more than just a carbon credit. That's exciting to me, right? I could brag about the fact that I'm impacting my local farmer. I can brag about improving topsoils and community engagement. So there's just a lot of pieces I think we're doing slightly differently, which again, our entire goal is to put our farmers in the front of the line, that if there's a dollar being spent from an environmental perspective, that those dollars channel towards us so that we can actually deliver that benefit back to our farmers. So how the economics work on this is annually we have to come out and actually do measurements, and we're going to confirm the actual levels of carbon in your ground, the bulk density in your ground, and that you've adhered to all the program requirements. Once that happens, you will get your first payment, $70 total over the year. The first payment of $45 comes on March 15th. The second payment of $25 comes on August 15th. So we're trying to front load the cash flow to help you guys out, but we did want to split the payments because we actually won't be receiving the cash flow from the end company until middle of the summer next year. And so we're saying we put a hard stop so you had predictability of August 15th as a worst case. But as soon as we get paid from our corporate partners in this, we'll get that second payment out to you. So that's how, looking forward into the 26 crop year, this is our commitment. Obviously, continuing HGX is offsetting all the testing costs. We're doing all the marketing and selling of this. So all that's supported, and again, we're making that donation. The one thing I do want to clarify for those people that are in the 25, so your existing program and you applied for 0% financing, that is coming due January 15th. When we talked to you a year ago, we had set an expectation that we are hopeful to get cash flow out of these carbon buyers to make sure we could cover that for you. And in 2025, even though the reality is we aren't going to have that cash in the bank, we've made the decision to go ahead and make that commitment. So for this growing season, if you're currently in the program, your first payment will come January 15th, and it'll be directly to Conduit to pay that down, and then you'll get $30 by August 15th. So that's for the people in the program. For anybody signing up new acres today or looking at committing and being part of this program for the growing year 26, you'll be getting your first payment of $45 in March of 27. So after the 26 growing year, March 15th of 27, you'll get the first 45. And then August 15th of 27, you'll get that next 25. So that's kind of the way the cash flow rolls as it relates to the economics of this program. So again, if you are transitioning or you're currently in the program, there's no re-enrollment. Like you're in a year, you're going into year 2, you're good. All the existing data and practices are the same. Nothing's changed. Same conversation about reduced tillage, same conversation about reduced fertilizers, but the parameters are identical. The difference is we're obviously trying to be clear on the payment and the benefits, so you know exactly what's happening there. And again, we're excited about that. So again, we are on the same trajectory. If you are in the 25 program, again, no new contract, you're beginning a field list with an addendum that again outlines the specific fields that you're continuing into year 2 with. If you have incremental new acres that you want to add that you didn't have in the program last year, that'll be another 3-year commitment on those specific acres as you roll into the 26 group. So for new participants, the thing that you would do now is get enrolled. You fill out the application. We get your field boundaries. We get those field boundaries reviewed. We come back to you and say, these are the fields that are approved. You'll get a detailed field list. You agree to those, and you'll be getting the actual contract. And at the time of signing of the contracts, when you're actually committed, and that'll happen over the next 45 to 60 days. But the critical thing now is to get enrolled so that you actually secure your acres. We are going to do 3.5 million acres this fall. At the current trajectory, we'll be sold out about September 15th. So things are starting to get urgent in terms of people. If you haven't made the decision, we ask you to go ahead and get with your soil health specialist and get your name into the program so that we have your acres secured. But again, we're excited about the trajectory where we've got to. We've got this momentum. We're asking you to join the movement. Again, at the core, it's about rebuilding your land. If we rebuild your land and you choose to engage in the sustainability side, that also empowers us to help your community. And we're going to drive, again, ultimately the higher performance through a better crop and a better future. So again, we're excited about everything we have rolling. It's been a really interesting 12 months of learning in terms of taking us from where we were a year ago to where we are. We're super proud and excited about the fact that we made a commitment a year ago that you'd be getting 2 tons at $70. And that would, after you get your product cost paid for, we get our testing costs, we have our buffer pool, that we'd be getting you a $30 check on top of the $40 for your product. We ended up being in that exact place. We're at $70 that we're paying for the 25 cohort of people that were involved. We're guaranteeing that in advance for the new 26 participants, so they know exactly what they're going to get. We are optimistic in 27 and 28 that it even gets better and better, but it's a commodity market. It'd be irresponsible to be trying to predict commodity pricing a year plus out. But again, we feel like we're trending in the right direction. Performance at a crop level has been great, and at a soil level. So we have really good assets to work with, and we think we have the attention of the marketplace. So again, to that end, I really do appreciate the support we've received, and I'm excited about what we have moving forward. And certainly if you guys have questions, you can put them into the chat to make sure that we can touch on those. But again, I'm happy to answer Any questions that you might have? So I got a question from the chat asking about the community piece. So on the community front, the $10 nonprofit donation back into a community, what we're going to try to do is aggregate that by geography. So in a given county, as a rough outline, we would look at the farmers that have participated and bought product in that area. We're going to ask them to submit projects that they would like to see supported. Ultimately, an independent company from Holganix, which will oversee this nonprofit, will make the final calls on which programs get supported. But again, it's going to all be driven from requests from our farmers. You know your community better than we do, but we look to invest. If you think about 3.5 million acres, we're talking about $35 million going back into local communities. So it can be extremely impactful that in your local community. And again, we're going to work in partnership with our farmers that in a local community, you put forward a request on a project you'd like to see supported. We're going to do the evaluation. We ultimately have to make the final decision. If we got 20 farmers with 20 ideas, we probably can't support all of them, but we're going to do our absolute best. And from a timing on that front, if you think about, as an example, the 26 growing year that I just mentioned, financially, we'll be being paid in the summer of 27, right? So we grow a crop in 26, we measure it. The second test result comes in the winter of 26. We then compare those two. We know how much carbon we have to sell. We then put it into the customer's hands. We get it audited, verified. We ultimately receive our payment. Once we've received payment, that's when we would start to be in a position to disperse. So it'd be fall of 27 when the benefit that comes out of the 26 growing season would actually roll through. So that's roughly the timing if you think about that community component. So there's a question that came through about increases. If indeed, so again, just to touch on this, we originally had hoped to be able to get a premium price. We had estimated 2 tons per acre at $70. The reality is, with the headwinds in this market right now, the current market's about $30 a ton. As we've debated this, we do have a better quality product. Could we go demand a premium over the current market pricing? We think we could, but what we really want to do is disrupt this marketplace. And so what we've decided to do is sell our carbon at $30 a ton in the short term because we have the tonnage to meet our financial commitments to you guys. We're going to maintain a market competitive price so we get on everybody's radar. So they're super excited about the fact that, wait a minute, for what I could pay for $30 a ton over here in this standard program, we're getting all of these benefits, community impact, everything else for the same $30. We want to be in the front of the line for all of this spending so that we can get people on board. As we continue to get momentum and as we start to create more demand for our particular approach through the Thrive Acre versus traditional carbon credits, then that's when commodity pricing kicks in. If we can over create demand, we can start to move our price up. And yes, if we see our price go up, we're going to share that benefit out to the farmers. So there absolutely is an opportunity as we move into future years and we continue to grow more and more value in the marketplace that we can continue to move that price. And we're going to be upfront about that. We're going to be transparent with our success in this area. But again, the bigger thing that we heard from our growers is, man, oh man, given all the things we have going, predictability of cash flow and certainty is really important to us right now. And that's really what we're trying to deliver. So sitting here in August of 25, excuse me, trying to decide what strategy to bring into your growing season 26, we wanted to bring that certainty. I will say our goal is that this time next year, we will be a year smarter and we will be in that same position to say, this is what we expect and commitment we can give you for 27 before you make that decision a year from today. So that's ultimately the biggest shift we've had in the program is our commitment to trying to give you that transparency and that confidence so that you make a really informed decision. A year ago, we just didn't know enough, so we couldn't make any guarantees. Today, we're in a much better place, so we can feel like we have that opportunity to give you that. So there was a question around the cost of the product coming into 27, and we see no price changes occurring. So our price cost is $20 per application. We don't anticipate that changing. So they're asking if in March of 27 you get a $45 price, I mean, check in the mail, were we planning on increasing our price to $45? And the answer is no. Our price for that product will still maintain at $40. We're just trying to front load as much of the payment as possible to make sure that we 100% cover the cost plus a little extra in March of next year. So the question is about individual farm performance. So again, we estimated and wanted people to make the business decision a year ago on assumption of 2 tons because we felt very safe that that was an attainable level for farmers. We also estimated a commodity price. Um, the good news and the bad news is we underestimated the performance of our soil. We outperformed what we'd hoped, so we got to an average of 5 tons. We were overly optimistic about what we thought the commodity price we could demand. So where we were planning on 2 tons at $70, we ended up at 5 tons at $30. So the net of that is 140 was the original goal. We ended up at $150. So we got a little bit more per acre than we'd hoped. And that's why we took that $10 and we put it forward to give back to communities, is because of that. The question is what if it happens to be 6 tons? Do I get more? And the answer is no. The reality is that again, the corporate buyer does not want farm level risk and won't pay for farm level performance. So we're having to aggregate all of our acres into a single project, sell that out into the corporate world, and then everybody gets the same paycheck. Again, if as the aggregate, as the group, if we go from this year at 5 tons to next year, we have to say we average 6 tons, there is an opportunity for us to demand a premium because of that performance. And we're going to be more than happy to share that back to the farmers if it happens. But farm level differentiation, unfortunately, we can't reward as much as originally we hoped we could. It's not possible because there's no buyers. If someone went out and tried to sell their unique acres, nobody's buying because you could do really good this year and it could go down next year. And statistically, it's too dicey. They want to aggregate a broad number of acres across a bunch of markets. So we're in 11 states across 1 million acres in 25. That's a safe size of a project that, good or bad, given a given region, they're still going to be safe that they're going to get what they paid for. So again, individual farm performance, unfortunately, moving forward is not going to be something that we can individually reward, even though that was the goal. We found out there was no buyers for that particular product, but we are excited that, again, that our overall average worked out to where we can honor our commitment for the financial success that we'd hoped for. And we think that there's a bright future and consistency that we originally probably couldn't have guaranteed. So there's a question here about do I have to apply Holganix on the same fields for all 3 years in the program? And the answer is yes. So if you had, 2,000 acres worth of fields in this program and you applied spring and fall of last year, you have to go on those identical fields in year 2 and year 3. If, for say, you lost a 200-acre field, you can remove it. So you could only have 1,800 in this second year of the program. That's fine. If you happen to swap that out and you have a different farm that you were able to rent for 250 acres, you can go ahead and opt to put that into the 26 program. But for that 250 acres, you'll have a forward-looking 3-year commitment and you need to put spring and fall on it for all 3 years. So if you have existing fields from last year, you have to maintain those same fields. You can't swap them out because we're committing to our corporate buyers that there's consistency over a 3-year period on the same exact field. Again, you have the right, if you lose something to a lease, you can drop it off. But again, you have to maintain the same fields year to year against that field list that we supplied. So there's a question saying if we happen to be at 0 tons, if we didn't perform at all, do we still get paid? And that's where I get a little bit of joy in this and saying yes. So many farmers, and I love all you guys, feel like I'm the one that's farming differently and I'm going to outperform everybody else. I really want that upside. I will say again, we picked our 24 pilot farmers because they're all really good farmers and we have really trusted relationships with them. And 20% of them had a negative performance. A lot of times it was related to bulk density, but the net of the measurement was it was zero or less. Um, Everybody's getting the same check. So yes, if you perform or not in the short term, and I think year over year, you always will see benefit by the time you get through the 3 years. But if you happen to have a year that you don't perform for whatever reason, you're still guaranteed the same payment. So that's the beauty of the aggregated acres, is that you can count on this regardless of your individual farm's performance. So again, I think that that should give people some confidence to understand that. So there's a question about the timing of payment. So this year in 25, the payment comes due January 15th. We are making that payment on time, so it never comes out of your guys' pocket. The way that the structure is moving forward based on the cash flow we're getting committed to by our carbon buyers, there is a two-month gap. You would actually have to pay in January, and then we turn around and get something in the mail, a $45 check in the mail 60 days later. And I appreciate that causes some stress. The reality is that's our cash flow. One of the things that we're really trying to urge people to look at is that appreciate and understand Holganix is an input, just like nitrogen is, just like any of your other inputs. It needs to be in your budget. The beauty of how we think about budget, though, is we want you to reduce your other spending by more than the cost of our product. If you're not looking at your overall strategy that you would have applied before you met Holganix for 26, and you can't reduce in a way to make it a lesser expensive planting opportunity in 26 and it was in 25, then honestly we don't really want you in the program, because I don't want anybody to spend an extra dollar that they don't have to. So I want your net spending in spring of 26, the time you put seed in the ground, to be less than you spent in 25 against what us being involved as part of your lineup, right? So we want to cut nitrogen. We want to pull back on P and K. We probably want to pull back on some tillage. There's a number of ways that we can take costs out of the system, which is what we want to partner on. So you're allocating a certain amount of funds to get through harvest of next year. We want that to be less. We are cash flowing you through that entire growing season. So again, it's still, again, this year 0% financing till January of 27. You will have to be ready to make that payment in January of 27. Once you've made that payment, again, you've covered that as an input cost, then incrementally HGX will be mailing you a separate check from their entity because of the money they got from the corporate buyers, again, in the form of a $45 check on the 15th of March, and then the 25 in August 15th. So hopefully that clarifies that. So any other questions? I think I've covered everything that I've seen come in so far. So there's a question about overall performance, and do we have a concern about the trend or it going below expectations? And if we think somebody won't perform, are we rejecting them from the program? I will say currently we are intentionally spreading the acres across our broader marketplace so that we don't have any concentration in a given region, because we don't want that sensitivity. It could be weather, it could be other things. At this point, we are not excluding a given grower because of specific concerns, other than if they're not willing to commit to reducing fertilizer, we are not allowing them in the program. It is a requirement. If they're not willing to ensure that they're reducing their tillage and not disrupting the soil deeper than 6 inches, they are not allowed in the program. So we are being very specific and require those fundamentals. If you're not doing those, you cannot be in the program. But with that said, our confidence is that, again, as we continue to move through this program, that every farmer who's been in an extra year is going to continue to perform better, and that continues to drive the overall performance of the program. So our confidence, again, is very high that we're going to make our 5-ton carbon minimum. And because of that, and again, taking into consideration, we've got a buffer pool that we have to maintain above that. If for some reason we found ourselves only be able to off, truly netting 4.5 less the buffer pool, we would eat into our buffer pool and into that as part of this. So we're trying to safeguard the overall program so there's predictability, but that's why we're also only going 1 year at a time. Again, so we'll have more data coming out of the end of this year on 1 million acres. We'll be even smarter the year after. So we want to take this one step at a time, but we feel every indication we're having infield measurements throughout this growing season, we're seeing carbon move. We're seeing the performance we'd hoped. We're seeing the crop health. We're seeing the overall balance. So again, we're optimistic and we're also trying to be realistic that we don't know everything and we're going to continue to get smarter as we go. So just a real quick question on there. We mentioned Horizons. Horizons again an app-based data platform that will house all of your data. We're super excited about the combination of physical grid samples and stratification through the depth of your soil to see your nutrients, layered on top of NDVI and satellite imagery, so looking at plant health throughout the season. Next growing season, you're going to have this on your phone and you're getting alerts. If you've got any pressure in a given field, you got a nutrient deficiency, you have anything else, you're going to get notified and it's going to be real-time data for you. I will say I'm very excited about, as much as you've heard me even on this presentation talk about fertilizer reduction being really critical to our success. We have 1.6 million acres currently in Horizons. Again, all of our salespeople are trialing it and making sure we're debugging it right now. But we did an analysis across those acres looking for nutrient deficiency. We have sub 1% nutrient deficiency across 1.6 million acres. So even though we're the ones saying you need to reduce your fertilization, I can say, hand on my heart, very excited that it is absolutely playing out the way we knew it would, which is the biology is invigorated by having less food in the system. It gets to work and it ensures a balanced, healthy plant. And that's what we're seeing in all the NDVI and field level data across the entire pool of 1.6 million acres. So again, super excited about where we're at and about the results that we're seeing. And Horizons, we feel, will be a truly impactful and disruptive technology to have on your phone so that when you can't field scout everything, you still have the ability to have your finger on the pulse of your farm. So people are asking about the data from 25, the winter measurement to 26. All of that data year to year will be in Horizons. So you'll see your farm, your performance, how did your organic matter change, how did your bulk density change, what your nutrients were. So season to season, 12 months apart, you're going to see that transition. And again, what you should be seeing is reduced compaction. You should see your P and K numbers moving up because we're releasing them more efficiently with the biology. You'll already obviously know your yield results, but yes, all that data will exist in the platform and you'll have access to it. So there's a question about tonnage, excuse me, gallons of water for fall application. So you put 10 gallons down per acre or 15. And the confidence is that if you're spraying 10, you're actually going to get a more aggressive spray and you potentially get better adhesion and penetration. So for me, look at the weather, right? Moisture isn't always our friend. 10 has always been our baseline. If you want to spray at 10, you're going to be fine. If it happens to be unseasonably dry, I would argue that getting a little bit extra moisture in the system is going to be beneficial. But I would also have confidence that on mass last year over 1 million acres, the average was 10 gallons. That's what people were putting down. Again, I feel like this, not every pocket, but a broad base across all our acres and farmers, this has been a pretty good year for moisture. So I think we'll be in a really good place to where you can feel good about using 10 gallons. But again, you use your judgment based on the moisture that you see in your soil. So there was a question around qualified acres. So you submitted all your fields. We had a 20-acre minimum from a farm level, individual field level. And if those were considered unqualified and we didn't include them in the program, they are released from the balance of the 2 years. So It's your choice whether you want to continue to apply Holganix if you see the agronomic benefit. You want to continue that, but we are not in any way monetizing those acres. We're not going to actively measure those acres. They are released from the program. The only acres that are quote unquote in the program were on that field list and were approved as participating fields in the actual program itself. If you submitted incremental fields above that that didn't qualify, then they are released and they are not part of the program moving forward. So the question is should I be doing separate soil tests if we're doing this work? I think the thing that's interesting about our soil testing is the consistency. We're going to be doing it every single year if you're part of this versus typically you'd be doing it every 3 years. The stratification is very intriguing to us in terms of looking at what's your nutrient level at 6 inches, 12 inches, and 18 inches. So I think there's another knowledge set that we're going to gain by watching that over time and seeing how the nutrients are stacked up in your soil. So I think that's very additive and can be informative in terms of you making decisions on your farm. I will say it is a 15-acre grid. So it is not a traditional 2 to 3 acre grid. So would this replace your every 3 year rotation, looking at your broader acres, trying to set your variable rates? I would personally say probably not. I would probably still take that snapshot to see across the variability of your given field, if you're trying to make variable rate decisions across fertilizer and other things, that you have that level of granularity moving forward. We're going to give you a really good consistent baseline. We're going to give you really good knowledge at a macro level across your fields, your overall stratification of nutrients. But when it comes to actually making those more finite variable rate decisions, I think having an updated soil test would make a lot of sense. All right. Again, I think I've run through the questions. If you happen to have any more, um, happy to answer them. But again, I really appreciate everybody's support. And I really appreciate the time that you guys have given me this morning. And I think we're going to call it a wrap. But if you have any more questions, please reach out to your soil health specialist. They'll take care of you. And I'm excited about how we move forward. Appreciate it, everybody.